Clement Apaak. Dr. Apaak, good evening. Congratulations once more. Welcome to Point Blank.
Well, let me say a hearty good evening to you and the people of Builsa South who
have returned you to
have
Parliament.
done me
good again
the great honor of renewing my mandate, which is an expression that they can give in authenticating the services I've been rendering to them over the past almost 8 years, as expected. So I say thank you to the people of Builsa South for voting for me and voting for John Dramani Mahama. And of course, my campaign team deserves a lot of accolades, led by our venerable Chairman Caesar Akenkang, and everyone who played a role to ensure that we secured victory in Builsa South for the NDC and contributed to the election of President-elect John Dramani Mahama. So Builsa Ngamena, Mate Wamena Jiam, Apusini Junoi, Ala Yuenka Nibika Dr. Apaak Lena, Manyeni Jiam, Nele voted me, Nibika Apaak, Ali John Dramani Mahama. I said, Inyela, Ayuendila, Dollar, the Sunya Apaak and Mape, Mama Mape, Manyeni Jiam.
I see. And it does appear that this was your biggest margin since the 1996 election. You got some 57.25%, is that correct?
Well, in terms of the percentage, I think it is about 63%.
Oh, I see.
It's about 63%, which clearly is an improvement over the last two cycles. And I'm excited about that.
I see.
Yes.
So what have you been doing right? Because even on the party ticket, the intra-party one, you went unopposed.
Yes.
And so it means you certainly have been doing something right. What have you been doing right in the constituency?
Well, I think it all has to do with my attitude, my demeanor, and the fact that I've been very open, transparent, and sincere with the people of Builsa South. So I don't go making promises that I know I cannot fulfill. And if and when people make requests to me, I evaluate the request, and if I can help, I do. So I think it is largely because the people of Builsa South have believed and continue to believe that I would always do my best to ensure that I meet their expectations, even if not enough. I always do my best for them. And I think it is also because I've been sincere with them, I've been honest and transparent with them, and they have come to understand that Apaak would always do his best. And when I cannot, I am able to explain to them why I've not been able to meet some of their needs. So it is become what I would describe as a symbiotic relationship between myself and the constituents. And I think that that is probably why I've been given the mandate for the third time in a row, and for the second time in a row. As far as primaries are concerned,
I see.
I went unopposed. Yes.
Okay. Great. All right, so now let's get to it. You're coming from Parliament.
There's
a big discussion in Parliament about expenditure and advance of appropriation. Why does it appear that it's getting challenging, getting the governing side or the government, to lay before the House this thing people call mini budget to deal with the first quarter of the year? Why is it appearing so difficult? Because we heard on Monday that it to be laid the following day or Wednesday. Today is Thursday, and it's still not been laid. We're hearing about tomorrow and possibly Saturday. What was the matter?
Well, I wish you had posed this question to somebody from the MPP side in Parliament, or for that matter, the leader of the House. And you are right. Today is Thursday. Tomorrow is Friday. It had been our hope that, as we call it, the mini budget would have been passed by now to take care of affairs of state between January and March. You see, this is a statutory requirement. It is something that is a creature of law, that it ought to happen.
Yeah.
And from all indications, and I'm just coming from Parliament, it is clear that the MPP side, very strangely, seems to think that it can use what Ghanaians expect all of us to do in the service of the nation as a bargaining chip, somehow to try and get us to agree to a number of proposals that they want us to deal with, including the tax exemption. And I don't think that that is acceptable at all.
How do you come to this conclusion? I mean, I'm using the mini budget as a bargaining chip to get you to agree to some of the proposals you are bringing. How did you get to this conclusion?
Well, I say so because this is the fourth day that we expected the minister to just simply appear in Parliament, stand up, and then bow in recognition of what we know he ought to do.
But they say he's been busy with his transition team. He's not been to Parliament at all.
Well, we have not seen him. And in any case, this wouldn't be the first time that a bill or a paper will be laid in the absence of the substantive minister. It has happened before. So it is the posture and the pronouncements. For example, earlier today, whilst we were in Parliament, anticipating that finally the Minister for Finance would come and lay this mini budget, it wasn't happening. And there was a lot of discourse going on amongst us. Then, at some point, the matter of another bill that needs to go for the third reading came up. This has to do with climate, a bill related to climate. And so in that process of trying to get something going, the leader of the house, off the mic, made comments to the effect that they were not going to support that bill in terms of the third reading, although the minister was there to have moved it. That they wouldn't do that so that we would go and use it to get money.
To get money for the state?
I mean, it was a very bizarre, strange observation to make.
People heard him?
People heard him. He even went on to make the claim that we can do what we want. If we want, we can even kill him, which was unparliamentary. So a number of us were on our feet to draw attention to what was clearly strange commentaries that were definitely unparliamentary. Then when we were about to adjourn, because obviously we were not making progress, Speaker himself came in because he had ceded the seat to the second deputy speaker. So he came back, and then proceedings continued. But the situation was getting a bit acrimonious. So the Honorable Kene Japan, who was also then sitting in the front bench of the MPP side, rose. And then Speaker gave him a chance to also contribute to what was going on and what was on his mind. When he was commenting, he made a pronouncement to the effect that we ought to look at the issues holistically, ostensibly making the case that if we do not agree to what their side had listed on the order paper as important government business, and yet we want to pick and choose what we think merits our support, then the situation that we find ourselves in is what we should expect. Invariably, he is confirming the long-standing suspicion that we have
that you pass
that the MPP side now thinks that they can hold us to ransom in as far as we do not agree to pass all of what they want us to pass.
Including the tax exemption.
They would then also hold us to ransom. But what they forget is that Afenimaki and the MPP side in Parliament are not holding Dr. Apaak to ransom. They are not holding Dr. Kaisel Atuforsin to ransom. They are not holding Kwame Agbaja to ransom. They are holding the good people of Ghana to ransom. Because this has to do with keeping the state machinery functioning. And this is a requirement of law.
I heard Dr. Kaisel Atuforsin make the point as well, but I also heard Speaker. But assuming they fail to present the expenditure in advance of appropriation, and the life of this parliament elapses, or this parliament expires, what can you do? Can't you come back as a new parliament, 7th January, 8th January, 9th January, and get this sorted out?
Well, it is going to create a very unusual situation. But if they choose to continue to be belligerent in meeting their responsibilities as far as Ghanaians are concerned, clearly they would have to face some sanction. They must be punished for this, whether they like it or not. They are still the governing party. They are in charge of government business, and they ought to do what is expected of them. This cannot be acceptable. This cannot be tolerated. Why must we be held to ransom? Why must the people of Ghana suffer because they want us to pass tax waivers that we do not think are justified? Why should we be given a colossal amount of over $400 million to companies who do not deserve tax waivers?
I see.
And so for this reason, you are holding us to ransom?
I see.
That is simply not acceptable.
I think they will have other ideas, or I'm sure they will have a rebuttal to that in due course. But of course,
but there is no other justification.
That point is being well.
You are in government. You are.
And it's your job.
You lead the house. You bring government business.
How about if
this is part of government business
that it's not ready, because they said a few things have happened, so a few figures will have to be relooked at. How about if that is what is holding the process up?
Well, then why are they giving us the runaround?
So you've not seen
why are they giving us the runaround? No, we have not seen him. I have not seen him.
I see. I see. Anyway.
So they should get to it and do the work that Ghanaians gave them. Their mandate is 4 years. They are still in charge of the affairs of state. And they must act accordingly.
I see. Interesting. Now, let's deal with some education, which is really your forte. I mean, we've seen some interesting development in respect of the WAEC, or West African Examination Council, etc. They say that government owes them so much that they are unable to release results or process the results of the SHS persons who wrote the WAEC exam, recently, and that they need about 25 million cedis to help fix scanners and do a few things so that they can at least release their results. That hasn't happened. As a member of the Education Committee, deputy ranking for that matter, what response do you have? What information do you have in respect of this indebtedness to WAEC, and what are plans to get them paid?
Very, very unfortunate development. Very disheartening, and indeed, I would say condemnable. Because a government has responsibilities to its citizens. These are our wards, in excess of 460,000 of them, who sat for and wrote WAEC. They are expectant, rightly so, to see how well they have performed, to guide them in the choices that they ought to make going forward. This delay has implications for the students, for the parents, because you would agree with me that even when your ward qualifies to take up a place in a university, a public one at that, you ought to prepare your ward. You need time as a parent to prepare your ward. The son or daughter or the ward must also prepare him or herself. And the tertiary institutions would also rely on the results to make a determination as to who qualifies to be admitted to what institution and to pursue what course. And here we are. WAEC is unable to meet its timelines because government has failed to defray its indebtedness to WAEC. And Salom, you would agree with me that my good self and my ranking member over the past several years have been constant and consistent in raising alarm and calling attention to government's indebtedness to WAEC almost every time. And this ought not to be happening because these are matters that are known. Every year we know the number of students who are going to sit for the BECE, for WASI. Government has a policy of absorbing the fees of these students, and WAEC definitely reminds government of these obligations.
Their portion of it.
So why government has to wait all the time for us to get to a crisis point before it does the needful begs the question. So as I'm speaking to you, yesterday the ranking member Peter Nochu made a statement on the floor of Parliament drawing the attention of Mr. Speaker to this potential crisis staring us in the face, largely because government is failing to meet its obligations to WAEC, and WAEC is therefore incapable of doing what it ought to do and to publicize the results. After the ranking member had made the statement, the Speaker asked the Minister for Education to come back to the House today to apprise us of what he was doing to address the situation so that WAEC can proceed to do the needful in terms of completing what WAEC describes as post-examination activities. Right before I left Parliament, I had a tete-a-tete with my ranking. And the information we are receiving is that government has issued a check for 25 million Ghana cedis to WAEC. But we are talking about an amount of 118 million Ghana cedis. Why you give only 25 million Ghana cedis? Clearly, this is not even half. It's a drop in the ocean.
They say they need that $25 million to pay their technicians and to work on some scanners and then make some other financial commitments. So it does appear that they themselves would have suggested that, okay, you give us 25 million, we can work with it, whilst you work to give us the rest.
No, that is not it. Because you see, they have to pay to repair the scanner, as we talked about. They also have to make a deposit. And they have to procure what they call a bigger bandwidth to upload the results.
The results, yes.
And they have to pay exam officials to scrutinize the scripts for the irregularities before decisions are made to implement what is the correct results before it is released. So from the information that we are picking up, this amount is woefully inadequate. In fact, they will require an additional 35 million in addition to the 25 million. to be able to do the barest minimum.
Wow.
And this is not even going to cover a lot of the other indebtedness that we can speak about. We have a lot of suppliers who are on the neck of WAEC because they've taken a lot of supplies on credit without paying.
Wow.
So, whilst government claims to have made an effort, I'm sorry to say that the 25 million is woefully inadequate. It's not going to change the current arrangement at all.
I see. Now let's move on quickly. So your party, while in opposition, you're not in government yet, but you are.
Yes, but we will be
government. You are government in waiting.
Government in waiting.
The needful has been done. So I mean, you promised a number of things. You talked about reviewing the free SHS policy. Of course, there's no time to deal with that. But you also talked about the no academic fees program. Students will be going to school in January. Are they to expect that this no academic fee program will kick in, given all the difficulties we are hearing about?
Well, first of all, let me correct you. We didn't say we will review. We said we would improve and sustain.
Okay. No. So you are falling policy for the difficulties that the term review. But now the needful has been done.
Since
so
some people had chosen to define review as cancel, we had to be more specific.
To improve,
with regards to what
improve
we have,
and what?
Improve and sustain.
And sustain, great.
Yes, that is what
so
we
that's
are going
still on.
to
And
do.
you promised to hold a national consultative assembly of a kind, a stakeholder engagement, national consultative conference on education.
Yes,
in your
generally.
first 180 days.
Education generally.
But talk to me on the no academic fee policy for all first-year students in public tertiary institutions. Would that happen this year?
Well, we've not taken over yet.
You take over in January.
Yes, so when
students will go to school in January.
When we take over, well, we are even talking about WAEC results not published. So let's take over. When we take over,
I see.
Then we will deal with that issue.
Great. All right. I mean, our time is up.
Is that so? Soon.
When I'm speaking to
unbelievable,
Dr. Apaak,
I wanted to list a number of issues that we were going to do to improve and sustain the free school policy.
You have 1 minute. You have 1 minute.
First of all, we have said that we are going to ring fence a percentage of our oil revenue to serve as dedicated funding for the free SHS.
Okay.
We've also talked about decentralizing the feeding arrangements, where we are going to extract the middleman known as buffer stock, where we know that buffer stock itself has become part of the problem rather than part of the solution, so that we can deal with the feeding arrangements. We've also talked about bringing on board the private schools to help reduce the pressure, even as we augment existing infrastructure, so that we can eliminate the double track system and have a single track among many.
Is there any timeline to eliminating the double track?
Well, give or take, we have given ourselves at least within the range of a year to address that.
Okay.
Because, infrastructure takes time to mature from beginning to end. But I think with the mix of proposals that we have made, we should be able to deal with it
when are we to see this national consultative conference on education? Of course, you said first.
Well, it is within the first 120 day pledge that John Mahama has made. Yes. So within that time frame, I think we should be able to do that, including the distribution of free sanitary pads to our young girls in secondary and basic schools. All of those are captured within the first 120 days.
I see.
Yeah.
All right, so that was Dr. Clement Apaak, Deputy Ranking Member on the Education Committee of Parliament, Member of Parliament for Builsa South. His people have returned him to the House from January 7, 2025. This is how we conclude today's edition of the program. Show produced by Nana Kwabna Wilson, Beverly in London.